I'd like to call to order the February 8th, 2018 meeting of the Council Strategic Planning Committee. Roll call, Madam Secretary. Let the record show that all members are present. Item number 2 is our invocation and pledge of allegiance. I'll ask everyone to please rise and join us in prayer to be led this evening by Councilman Bill Dawson.
Dear Heavenly Father, thank you for this opportunity to gather in your name. Please help and guide us to make the right decisions. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen.
Okay.
I pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. The next item is our public comment period. Anyone that wants to speak on any of the 3 items on our agenda this afternoon, please feel free to fill out a speaker's card and come up and bring it up here, and you will be recognized and given your 3 minutes on the appropriate item if that comes. Item number 4 is approval of the January 11th, 2018 Strategic Planning Committee meetings.
So
Chair will entertain a motion.
So moved.
It's been moved by Councilman Joseph to approve the minutes. Do I hear a second?
Second.
Second by Councilman Lawler. Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, those minutes are approved. Before we get into our items this afternoon, this ought to be a fairly quick meeting. We only have 3 items, and they're not, in my mind anyway, right now, very controversial or require a whole lot of discussion. I would like to welcome 2 new members to our committee. Sitting to my right, to your left as you look on, Councilman Bill Dawson, who is, of course, the chair of our full council. And then to my left, to your right, all the way down to the end, Councilwoman Terry Casso. They will be replacing for the 2018 session Councilmen Cagnalotti and Johnson. So welcome, guys. Looking forward to working with both of you guys. I might say also Bill was here once before, and so he kind of knows his way around this particular committee, and we're glad to have him back. Item number 5, moving right along, is the RFQ, request for qualifications for independent legal counsel for the Ascension Parish Council. Item I put on the agenda at the request of Councilman Lawler. So, Aaron, your nickel.
Yes, thank you very much. Basically, this is a request for to put out an RFQ for qualifications for legal counsel to assist us when we have a conflict with our current legal counsel provided to us by the district attorney's office. Situations do arise every once in a while where we are at odds with our legal counsel, with what the advice he may be giving us or what we need to get done, or maybe he's already advised somebody else which is on something that is contrary to the information that we need. So we have a right per Louisiana ethics law to have our own counsel in conflict situations. And I believe it's very important, not just for us, but also for the attorneys that serve us, that we don't put them into ethical situations where they have to choose between doing the ethical thing and then what they're being asked to do sometimes. Fortunately, we don't have these situations very often, but I do think it's very important that when the situation arises, we have the funding and we have the ability to, on short notice, contact our legal counsel and get an opinion or whatever else it is that we may need.
I move that we move this forward to the full council.
Second.
Okay, it's been motioned by Councilman Dawson, second by Councilwoman Casso, that we move the item number 5, which is the RFQ for independent legal counsel, Ascension Parish Council, to the full council. This would be a recommendation, and I guess the motion means, Mr. Lawler, at the next regular scheduled meeting. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Any discussion? Any objection? Hearing none, that motion carries. Item number 6 is to create a subcommittee, or to consider creating a subcommittee, we may or may not do that, to develop a plan for permanent funding for care / animal control. I list my name as the leader of the discussion for that tonight. I think it's important to disclose for the record that Councilman Aaron Lawler actually approached me to consider this. I think, Aaron, already you haven't met with Jolie Culpepper for CARA. I don't know if you've actually met with Mr. LeBlanc from Animal Control, whatever. But the last time we left this, going first through this committee and then all the way through finance and then all the way through the full council, we had voted as a group to increase the funding right now, which comes out, everyone doesn't know this, needs to know, our general fund from $200,000 to $350,000, which was a bump of 150. In other words, there is no dedicated funding for it, and so at the time, when we left it, there was some discussion is that maybe we would want to identify how we could find permanent funding, and so that necessarily implies that there would be a tax, which then also implies that there'd be a chance for the public to vote on that if this council decides it's something that they want to do and put on an upcoming ballot. Again, why am I doing this then instead of Aaron is that I proposed to Councilman Lawler that maybe we ought to do at least this, start a committee, a subcommittee of the Strategic Planning Committee, if you want to put this item forward, starting here, to examine the possibilities of how this could be funded. I understand, I've spoken with Ms. Culpepper that they're working on a 10-year plan of what exactly their needs are. I believe also Mr. LeBlanc, heading up Animal Control, is looking into what they're doing as well. But we'd have to decide just as one issue. Would this be a property tax, and if so, would it be ad valorem or would it be a parcel fee, and et cetera. Along with that, I have taken the liberty to start the ball rolling and spoke with, not spoke, but I wrote an email to the assessor's office in Justin, is it Champagne? Champagne. Thank you for the correction. He wrote back what exactly we can, what amount of money, I guess is what I'm trying to say, we can consider for a ad valorem versus a parcel fee. That's in your packet, ladies and gentlemen, this evening, and you can clearly see that a 1 mil tax is worth about 1.2 million dollars, and I believe the parcel fee at dollar increments is if you get down to try to make apples and oranges, you'd have to go as high as maybe $20 on a parcel fee to get close to that 1.2 million figure. Now, I'm not wedded to that figure or anything else. It's something that the committee would have to decide, and of course, it's something else we'd have to look at when we hear back from both CARA and Animal Control as to what their needs are beyond what they're currently funded at. We do know, however, SSA did do a study for us to try to increase efficiency and so forth, and one of the things that they reported was that the Humane Society of the United States, using national figures, if I can remember this correctly, have a per capita number of like $8, and when you multiply that times our 120 some odd thousand citizens in Ascension Parish, it's around $1 million, and that's the only reason I just threw that number out, but that's certainly obviously at this point arbitrary. The only other thing I've done to date, before we decide if we want to get a committee going on this or not, is I've also taken the liberty to speak with the planning directors and other individuals that would people in finance departments, for example, and so forth, of all the surrounding parishes that touch the borders of Ascension Parish. So that would be East Baton Rouge, Livingston, Iberville, Assumption, St. John the Baptist, and St. James parishes, as well as I looked at 4 parishes outside, St. Tammany, that aren't neighboring parishes to Ascension, St. Tammany, Lafourche, Orleans, and Jefferson. And I've handed everybody out. Unfortunately, I didn't put this on the overhead so the public can see it, but you can grasp this very easy by me just telling you that I can only find one precedent where there was dedicated funding, and that is the parish of St. Tammany. Of course, I knew that already. Everybody knows I have a little fishing camp in Slidell, so I knew I was paying that 0.82 mills of property tax for animal shelter. So they do have dedicated funding. So far, I can't find a neighboring or outside parish that likewise has that. They're all in the boat we're in, which is out of their general fund, they fund this particular service to the people. There are 2 blanks in the table, Assumption and Jefferson, because I'm waiting for that information. The people that I've contacted haven't gotten back to me on that, but I'm going to go out on a limb and guess they're probably going to be also parishes like Ascension that does not have a millage. So in summary, that's all I have on that, and at this point, the chair would entertain a discussion, and maybe that concludes or not with establishing a committee. As far as a committee is concerned, if I had my druthers, I'd like to see it certainly we have to keep under the quorum issue, so 2 members of this committee on the council side, and then maybe add from Kara, their president and vice president, which is Ms. Culpepper that I mentioned, and also Reagan. What is her last name? I can't quite remember.
Daniel.
Daniel. Are you Ms. Reagan? Thank you, Ms. Daniel. We may be bringing you up to the mic momentarily, ma'am. I figured someone from Kara would be here. And then maybe their legal counsel, which is Virginia Kelly Smith, who sat down with our attorneys originally and negotiated the cooperative endeavor agreement under which the parish and Kara currently serve. Also on the committee, it would be my recommendation that we would include, obviously, animal control, and that would be Mr. LeBlanc and perhaps one other if he wants, maybe Megan Choate, someone of that nature. That would be 3, 4, 5, and 2 council members, I guess a 7-member committee. And you know how these things work. You don't want too many people. But if we're going to be facing down the deadline, which would be, to me, one of the first tasks of when's the next ballot and what's the drop dead dates that you would have to abide by if we're going to go further with this, you know, we don't want to bog the process down unnecessarily, but we want to have the right people at the table. So with that, I'll open the floor up for discussion, and it's typical of this committee, I usually start on one end and go down the line. I think last time we were going left to right, so we'll go back right to left this time and start with Mr. OJ.
Doc, I mean, I'm gonna say what I said in the meeting before. These numbers which you just came up with is fine, and it's just basic what Kara want to do. Kara want to go out for whatever they want, bring it to us. I mean, I'll be glad to let the people vote on this here, but no problem. But, I mean, you know, for a committee, you want it, fine, but this is real simple. It's what we're gonna put on the ballot, either or. Is it a millage or partial fee? Other than that, that's all I got on it. I mean, but the public gonna have to do something, because I know we just can't constantly be taking money out of our general fund for this project here. Having 2 animal shelters, I just, 2 animal control, 2 animal shelters, we have a volunteer portion of it, and then we have a government part of it. I mean, what we're doing here. So, let the people just say what they want.
Thank you, Mr. Joseph, and without putting words in your mouth, I think what I just heard and everyone else is that you don't oppose it going to the ballot, and you don't necessarily oppose that we have a committee to my only reason, by the way, to talk about a committee in there is that when they came for the last funding out of our general fund, we held their feet, rightfully so, I think, to the fire about, you know, what do you want that money for? You know, an in-house veterinarian was an example. Perhaps a TNR program, trap, neuter, and release with the cats. More personnel, and of course we learned they were operating a little bit with red ink. But I do agree with you, Councilman, that, and I did back then, I'm not a big person, everybody knows that, for taxes, but I never go against the people's right to vote for or against the tax. I've been consistent on that as well. So if that's the will of this committee and we get it out of here as a recommendation to the full council, so be it. So with that, thank you, OJ, and Councilman Dawson, your turn.
Thank you. I agree with Oliver. I don't have a problem with sending it to the ballot. When they came to us for the extra money this past year, you know, I for one, and I think several people told them that, you know, you're going to have to go find a source of permanent funding, and I think they need to be the initiator of this. You know, I don't think that we are the initiator of this. You know, they have to come and tell us, what does it take them to operate? What are they proposing? You know, when I was with the fire department and they wanted to go out for a tax, we went out, we did the research. I mean, it failed at the ballot, but, you know, it was the initiative came from the people that want the tax, which is, you know, that's my view is that we need to be approached by Kara, you know, and it's not our initiative, it's the initiative of them, and you know, I would recommend that they do that without too much delay, because the budget process starts early in 2018. Myself and several other people told Kara that, you know, this is a one-time, the extra money that we got, you know, that I voted for it one time, but it was not something that expected to see every year, that they should go out and see what the people, put it to a vote of the people. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. So it sounds to me, again, to summarize each time, that you not object to the ballot either, and while we didn't really cover the committee issue, I'd just like the record to show that Kara did actually reach out to us through Aaron. Is that correct, Aaron? And then Aaron kind of said, Doc, why don't you go ahead and take the lead on this, which is what I'm trying to do. But I agree also with Bill. Just reaching out is one thing. He made 2 points here that I copied. How much does Kara need? And the same question, I think, can be asked legitimately to animal control. And what are they going to use the money for? Because that'll change what we put on the ballot. Is it going to be a parcel fee again? Is it going to be an ad valorem millage? If it's a millage, how many mills? If it's a parcel fee, how many dollars per piece of land? So thank you, Bill, and Mr. Lawler.
Thank you. Yeah, Kara kind of approached on this. What it was is when this originally passed several months ago, I said I'd like to give them 45 days to come back to us with not only a plan for permanent funding, as Councilman Joseph had recommended they do, but also an ordinance for spaying and neutering, because I think that is a cost-saving measure for them and for the parish. Unfortunately, I haven't seen any proposed ordinance for spaying and neutering. We did meet once with Mr. LeBlanc with Animal Control to talk about funding options, permanent funding options, and what their plans are, and they had some very good plans, and then it just fell away. I haven't heard anything else on it. And the problem is, as Councilman Dawson had said earlier, this was passed, but there was a good debate on it. We don't want to have that debate every year. There has to be some permanent funding mechanism. The ball is in Kara's court. They've got to come to us with a plan. Let us know what they need. The ball's in Animal Control's court. Come to us with a plan of what they need so that this can be done in a cost-efficient manner to the people of the parish.
Okay, thank you, Aaron. Once again, I've heard for the time, and you count me in, come to us with a plan, okay? And I would say, I agree with Aaron too, that plan ought to probably, wouldn't tell y'all how to do your business, but I'm a big fan of TNR, trap, neuter, and release to try to keep our feral cat population down. I know Jolie Culpepper and Reagan, probably yourself, I'm sure y'all have met over this, are contemplating right now a 10-year plan. I would like to see that. So, and in that plan, I would also say, in addition to what all these councilmen have said, how much, the part about what you need it for, I think is going to be ultimately very important. Is that a plan that you'd want to expand your existing facilities? And I believe it probably is. Is that a plan that you'd want to increase your existing staff? I would actually charge any committee, or if we don't even do a subcommittee, and y'all could just come up with a plan and give it right back to this committee, and we get it out of this committee and go to full council. I certainly would like to see it go out on a time horizon like 10 years, because we all know that 10 years from now, this parish will no longer be 121, whatever it is, 122,000 people. It's projected to be much, much more than that. And I've said this before, as the population grows, so do the numbers of pet owners. And as the number of pet owners grows, so do the numbers of irresponsible pet owners, which becomes a burden again on the parish. So I concur again with all these guys. I think dedicated funding, it sounds to me like if y'all need more money in the future and you just come back cap in hand, that's probably not going to be an acceptable approach. We need to find out what is it the people want, what are they willing to do. And so again, I guess a tax is the only way we're going to have dedicated funding. Ms. Casso.
Well, my first strategic planning meeting. Thank you, Doc. I'm happy to be here. I've told everybody, and I hate to say this, but it's really not good to share with people, but I'm not a big animal lover. I'm just not. My grandfather, I was raised on my grandfather's farm or around my grandfather's farm. He had a way of dealing with dogs and cats we didn't need, okay? But having said that, I understand where Kara's coming from. My husband is an animal lover, and so we have had 2 standard poodles in our house. They've been like family to us until we lost them, and so I do get it. But I will tell you this: more than a decade ago, Fire District 3 decided that it wanted to be a separate entity from Fire District 1, and it was required of them to come to the council and say, this is what we want to do. This is how we're going to do it. This is what we need, the money we need to raise. And then once that permission certainly was granted, which I would be happy to do for CARA, to see them get to the ballot, it was incumbent upon them to make it happen. And while I don't have time to serve on another committee, I do have time, if they would like me to sit down with that committee, if there is one, or with CARA, if they do not have a committee, and share with them how we went about raising public awareness around our need for Fire District 3. I can bring some other voices to the table of people who were actively engaged in that process. And it was an amazingly successful process, has continued to be. And look, the public has more than gotten what they paid for. I mean, it's an incredible fire department with amazing leadership. So while I don't feel the need for another committee, I think it is incumbent upon them, not to repeat myself, but I'm happy to help in any way that I can. And I wish them good luck. I think it's a worthy cause.
Okay, thank you, Ms. Casso. We, of course, can have a second round or as many as necessary. I think, Mr. Lawler, you want to say something?
Yeah, very briefly, I don't feel that there's a need for a committee also. And I only say that I've got other subcommittees that I'm serving on. And that's not a shot at this plan or trying to move this forward. That's just to say that CARA and Animal Control put something together, bring it to us that we can then present to the people. And I don't have a problem with that whatsoever. I've already met with them, and they have some really good ideas. I want to say that they've talked about some good plans. Animal Control has talked about the need for quality transportation that's air conditioned for the animals, things that they need. And I know that Animal Control and CARA are willing to work together, which is a fantastic thing to try and go get this done. I'll be happy to spend a little bit of time with them, like Councilwoman Casso said, and help them, with a little bit of guidance on it. But they know what they need. They know what the plans are. I don't know if I could add anything more than they already have, quite honestly. They do a pretty good job of that. I just want them to bring something to us.
Thank you, Aaron. OJ.
Yeah, and thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just want to also let CARA, because of their unique situation, they will be accountable to the public for those dollars. It just won't be the government. They will be responsible, just like Fire District 3, just like a lot of our sub boards we have.
And Animal Control.
And Animal Control. But I mean just accountability to those tax dollars will be falling responsible to CARA too. Okay, just not the government body. Okay, that's all right.
Okay, and so before the chair entertains a motion on this, let me try to rectify how I slaughtered earlier the tax situation, so it would at least give, because that's CARA, it sounds like we headed to without a committee, so if CARA is going to do this solo, they need to have these numbers correctly. I did ask the two questions, how much revenue would be realized, and this is in everyone's packet, from the passage of a 1 mil new property tax in Ascension Parish. And in question two, how much revenue would be realized from the passage of each dollar, on a per dollar basis now, of a new parcel fee property tax in our parish. Response I got back from Mr. Champlin, Justin, was this. A 1 mil calculated as .001 tax, total taxable value to the parish, would be $1,219,303. The total taxable value is multiplied by 1 mil. Then you'll have the answer to your question. He said, take that number multiplied by 0.001, and it is that $1.2 million that Councilman Dawson supplied for us earlier. The answer to the second question, as of the 2017 tax rolls, there are 55,372 parcels in Ascension Parish. You take those total number of parcels and then multiply on a dollar basis, $1, that's the figure I didn't have readily available, it's 55,372. If you multiply that by a $20 parcel fee is where I got the little over $1 million. So to get right to that level of the U.S., and I'm not saying that's what y'all are shooting for, I'm just trying to give that number. I do realize we're already, and please correct me if I'm wrong, at a level of non-dedicated but general fund funding of this of animal control in care of these enterprises, right around $700,000. I believe both entities now get, is that correct? About $350,000. So it wouldn't be too much of a stretch to go a little bit beyond that, particularly if, there is the need to expand, for example, facilities and all. And I'm not quite sure how it would work, but maybe that would be in your plan. For example, in the libraries, sort of a somewhat contentious subject, they get a lot of money but don't use it until they can save enough up to build a library. It might be that the kind of tax that you might want to consider getting passed would not obviously let you build a facility overnight, but it would allow you to run your operation, bank maybe some money, and then down the line expand the Sorrento facility or start from scratch or whatever's going to happen. But I would say all that has to be somewhat addressed maybe in your plan. Well, we have further discussion.
I just have a
Mr. Dawson.
comment on the millage, and I don't know the answer to this question, but not all the millage is subject to the industry paying that tax. So that 1.2 million, you have to ask specifically if it were a tax for animal protection, will you be able to collect that from the industry? So, for example, the fire tax, you only get about $800,000 per mill because the industry doesn't pay it.
That's a real good point, and thank you for educating us on that,
Also-
Bill. Did you get that, Reagan? Yes, okay.
Additionally, in the same vein, I know I'd asked for some of this information before. I'm not sure that all of the 55,372 parcels in the parish would be subject to a parcel fee. Some of them within Donaldsonville, Sorrento, and Gonzales may not be because they're in the city.
Yeah.
So we may have to ask them which ones are outside of incorporated areas of the parish to get a more precise number.
It sounds, Reagan, that you might work very closely with the tax assessor's office because of all these little, I call them defligities that affect things, commercial packet parcels versus residential, and Mr. Lawler's, I see Mr. Dawson's asking, so I'm going to put it in the record. What is a defligity? You know what, to this day, I really don't know, but one of my professors at the University of Missouri, who was my physiology prof, would come in, and when he couldn't explain something to a student, he said, well, that's just a defligity. And I've looked everywhere for this. We now have the wonderful information superhighway, the internet. I've Googled it up. And I'm going to go out on a limb and say it's something that he invented. And that means Mr. Mitchell is sitting out in the audience, Mr. PT with our media sources. Don't use the word defligity, especially if you say Dr. Sadley said it. So, committee, we're now to a point, I think, of where the chair would, unless there's further discussion, entertain a motion as to what we are to do here, or maybe we don't even need that. Maybe we just direct, if that's the pleasure of this committee, the CARA folks, through their representative here tonight, of all that we discussed and what we think the path forward should be. It doesn't sound like there's a lot of support for a committee, so I really doubt I'm going to hear a motion there.
No doubt. I'd rather just let those two parties come back to us like we instructed them before. And I think they've been working on it. Just, once again, we're going to give them a time.
Would the
Election
committee-
is in November, so they need to,
Yeah, would the committee, since it is in November, would it be their pleasure not to come back to this committee, but go directly now to the full council to save time, or do you guys want them to come back here and have us make a recommendation?
come here, Doc,
All
so we
right,
can
so-
review their plan and then.
So
we
Reagan,
can-
whatever y'all do, we'll bring it, I'll put it in the agenda as soon as you say you're ready to go, but please be ready to go, because I'm sure the question's gonna be a little more detailed, when you come forward, especially, again, let me reiterate, how much do you need? What, are you gonna use the money for? Is trap neuter release, for example, gonna be part of it? Is facility expansion gonna be part of it? I'm not quite sure already with the money that was already, allocated to you guys. Did you even hire the in-house veterinarian, or in the process of doing that, or whatever? And by the way, if you didn't sign a card, but if you'd like to come say something to this committee?
No, sir, I'm good. We are in the process right now of,
Ma'am, if you don't mind, get into the
Yeah,
mic.
come up to the
since you-
microphone.
we're in the process right now of discussing with two different vets. One of them is a vet clinic that has 4 vets on staff that are willing to 1 day a week each come in instead of just having one permanent vet, they would not work at their clinic one day and come to the shelter. The other vet we were talking about, we are discussing doing an hourly. That way, if she has a day that she can work 8 to 8, instead of, 2 days a week from 9 to 5 or 3 days a week from 9 to 5. So we're kind of in the negotiation with both of them of what would be best for them as well as the shelter and the animals of the parish.
Okay. Do you have any questions for this committee, or?
No, sir.
Okay.
I don't. I mean, I think there's, we've discussed some with Aaron about, what we're going to do and the different millage and all that. And we need to meet with Michael Blanc again and get set down and get a good plan going. We have discussed with animal control some here, and there are needs for both of us. Like you
Right.
said, air-conditioned trucks, facilities, things like that. So both are in need, and I think we can very easily work together to come with a plan and be able to present it.
Very, very fine. And so what I'll do then as chair of the committee is when I hear back from you, I will schedule it and then admonish you to be sure that Mr. LeBlanc is here to
Yes, sir.
handle any questions as well, since it's, we can't leave them out. I mean, we have laws
Exactly.
about vicious bite cases.
They're a vital part of how this whole operation works.
Okay. All right, so
Oliver's got, and I have one comment.
we have another comment from Councilman Dawson.
Oliver's.
Wait,
Me.
yes, sir.
I just wanted, Lourdes made a good point about the municipality, city of Downsville, Sorrento, what you go. When you're looking at this tax, and they pay per animal that come to our shelter or come to your, care
Yes, sir.
shelter. Good to go sit down and see, can you negotiate something with that millage in that city? Because if you don't, you're still going to increase the fees to those municipalities.
Yes, sir.
So they need to know that get on board with this may help them, or, it just
could
might
hurt.
have to increase their fees on.
Right.
Okay, so
Yes,
I
sir.
mean, at least
Communicate
communicate
with the
them.
cities as well.
Okay,
Okay.
that's all. Thank you.
Can I just say one thing?
I think Mr. Dawson's next, and then Mr. Lawler.
Well, I just wanted to, you may know this already, but you need about 6 months lead time to get on the ballot. So
Yes, sir.
you're looking at, if November, it's about May, you should
Yes, sir.
be finished here.
I think we went through this.
Can we
last
help,
year.
yeah, can we help her there, Bill, and tell her who's a good contact person that can tell her the drop dead date to get something on the ballot?
Well, I mean, you'll have to go to the Secretary of State's website. That's the first start. And then you have to go to the Bond Commission, so you have to look at their schedule. But 6 months is a pretty good number to use.
Sounds like a plan.
Right, and our next election is in,
November. Well,
November.
the next election is, we had 2 spring elections, but you're too late.
but too late, well, I mean, the next possible election, so you've
November.
got timeframes there. Yes, Mr. Lawler?
I want to make clear, y'all didn't disappear, and I used the wrong wording there. I'm sorry for that. We worked on this. It didn't move fast enough for the April ballot, and I lost some momentum with it also. That when it didn't hit that, there wasn't an urgency on my part either.
Right.
So
Because then you have a breather and more time.
exactly, and I
understand.
apologize for saying y'all disappeared. No, that didn't happen. When we missed that deadline for April, I said, okay, we got time, and I'm not going to put my all into it right away because we do have a little bit of
Right.
time. So I
understand.
apologize
That's okay.
to everybody watching also.
And I will thank you for coming tonight. I
problem.
actually never spoke with you, but I spoke to Jolie, and she said I or someone will be here, so thank
Yeah,
you for
no
coming.
problem.
Yeah,
Anytime.
You've aided the discussion
One
greatly.
of us will make it.
I'm sure. Okay.
Anything else?
Any further questions for? Okay. Well, with that, then we're going to go ahead and move on to our final item. Item
Thank
number.
y'all.
Thank you, ma'am. Item number 7. And again, I'm not wedded to the title. We don't necessarily have to amend the homeroom charter, I think, to get this done. I think things that are in the mill right now with our council that Councilman Dawson has done, where we actually talk about modifying codes to take care of deficiencies and problems, might be an alternative way so that you can avoid going to the ballot. But so I just worded it that way. Don't nobody throw anything at me. Let's see what I'm talking about. We do have in the homeroom charter under Article 4, Governing Authority, Section 4-08, the following. It says that the governing authority shall elect from among its members by a majority vote a chairman who shall preside at its meetings, and that's what we're doing. Chairman shall be subject to removal by the 2/3 vote of the members of the governing authority. To my knowledge, that's never happened, but it's there. And the next sentence is the one that I take issue with. It says the chairman shall only be required to vote to break a tie. It is my suggestion, emphasis on that word, that we strike that sentence if we amend the charter, or, like I said, we can do this differently, going through putting a code out in our code of ordinances, and leave this alone, and replace it with wording along the lines as the council chairman can discuss, make motions, and vote on all items. And so the key part of that is discussion, motioning, and voting, and all on, I said items, I misread that, all questions that are before the council. The primary reason for this is that our current homeroom charter language is contrary to Robert's Rules of Order that we as a council have officially adopted in our bylaws. In fact, if we can read in Robert's Rules of Order, it says, and I quote, "In a board meeting where there are not more than about a dozen members present," we actually have 11 on our Ascension Parish Council, "some of the formality that is necessary in large assemblies would hinder business. The rules governing such meetings are different from rules that hold in other assemblies in the following respects." And skipping down in the text, you will read, "The chairman can speak in discussion," keyword on the line, "without rising or leaving his chair or her chair, the subject to rule or custom within a particular board, which should be uniformly followed regardless of how many members are present. He or she usually can make motions and usually votes on all questions." Thus, the amended language I like is the council chairman can, it's a word that means ability, it doesn't mean he has to, but, or she has to, whichever the case may be, but has the ability then to discuss, make motions, and vote on all questions. Why the suggested change? The underlying reason in my mind is because the voice of the people through the council's appointed council chairman should never be silenced when it comes to his or her respective voting privileges. Chairman should enjoy all the same and equal voting rights on any question that's called in front of our deliberative body, as do each of the other 10 elected council members. And so the chair will open the floor up for discussion, and since we went right, left last time, Terry, that puts you first on the hot seat.
Doc. Let's see.
Well, you can defer and do round two and let Aaron, Aaron's never bashful. You'll learn that in this committee, Terry.
I'm sure I will.
He's chomping at the bit right now. I'm sure he's got a lot to say.
I'm more bashful. But on its face, I don't have a problem with it. I mean, I really don't. I know that as the chairman of finance, I vote on each occasion. So I don't know why it's necessarily to change anything. However, I also think that we have the possibility, I think it's under discussion, of a charter committee coming up, and maybe this would be the more appropriate place to have this discussion. But irregardless, I'll certainly look forward to hearing everyone else's opinion.
I'm going to, again, summarize each time, and if you don't mind, give what I think. You said as finance chair that you vote anyway, so it wouldn't make any difference, and I agree, and I'm glad that you do that. However, you may not be chair forever and ever and ever.
Oh, absolutely not.
Someone else might.
I can assure you.
Might be in there and might be timid to do what you do. So I applaud what you do, but all I'm doing is trying to put the safety net under you or anyone that would succeed you in that chair to know that they're totally comfortable with what, and that's just one of these things. I think back when the Homeroom Charter Commission met, they probably weren't thinking a whole lot about council bylaws, or maybe the council didn't even have any, I don't know, but this is how things happen. And then all of a sudden another document comes forward and you're into this business of whether you should be doing this or not. Frankly, if the chairman shall only be required to vote to break a tie, it still says you had the ability to, but a lot of people, including our chairman right now of the P&Z, is taking this very personally. And I noticed the media, and I'm not picking on Mr. Mitchell, but he repeats what they say every time in the Advocate. The chair only votes to break a tie, and that's just not so. In fact, voting of the chair, and if you're really reading Robert's Rules of Order, is not discouraged at all. It is encouraged. And the reason the rule was put in there where the chair would vote to break a tie was for huge deliberative bodies, say like the Congress of the United States, where you have 400-something members. It's usually never an issue whether or not there's going to be a tie. Although lately, with the partisanship up there, that does, I guess, sometimes happen. But anyway, we thank you, Terry, and
You're welcome.
Mr. Lawler.
Well, I think one of the funniest things I've heard is having a chairman that's willing to speak, because we certainly don't have that problem in our full council meetings. He's not even paying attention right now. We never have a problem with this one. I know you, I'm teasing you. You know, I agree with this in concept, but it does state that there shall only be required to vote to break a tie. It doesn't say you can't vote otherwise. I would say there's no prohibition against that person, that chairman, ever voting. They're allowed to at any time. That is up to the chairman, in my opinion. I think one of the issues is a chairman's role is sometimes that of a neutral mediator. And I think if you have a mediator that's going to be voting on something, they're not always going to be neutral. And there may be some issues at some point where we're going to require a purely neutral chairman. And that's why I think it's important that they not be required to vote on every issue. You know, right now we have a chairman that is not shy about voting, which I applaud. I think I do the same in transportation. I don't remember if I vote all the time or not, quite honestly. I think I do. I'm not shy about it. I know Councilwoman Cazzo isn't. I know Councilman Satterley isn't. So I don't see a need for this right now, but I also agree with Councilwoman Cazzo that if we're going to move in the direction of a charter commission, this would be a great topic for that commission to explore.
Okay. Well, I'm like everybody else. I don't see a big problem with it. I have always read it to read that the chair can vote. There's no prohibition. I didn't read it as a prohibition. I don't always participate in discussion. I don't think that I'm prohibited from participating in discussion or making motions. You know, if you look at Robert's Rules of Order, the break point on large versus small is 12. It says about 12. So here we are at 11, and you know, so I try to give some preference to everybody else before I speak, and I try to, and when we were voting by roll call, I tried to vote last. So, you know, try to maintain that impartiality that a chair should maintain on the large boards, because, you know, 11, 12, you could call it either way. I think if it is addressed, you know, it's probably the easiest place and the right place would be to do it through changing the ordinance. You've got Article 6 of our code, council procedures, and, you know, certainly you could look at that and make changes to that would better clarify what the chair of each committee and what the chair of the council, because you have the standing committees, the procedures for that. I think, honestly, if you looked at this whole Article 6, you might find that there's some other places to do some fine-tuning. So, you know, maybe all of that. I wouldn't have an objection to it being included in a charter change. I just think that charter changes should be kind of sacrosanct. They should be absolutely necessary before we make any.
Right. The comment I would make about that, and I agree with 99% of what Councilman Dawson just said, and I can also see what Aaron is saying from the standpoint of the way it is worded in the charter about, you know, it doesn't take away your right to do it, but on the other hand, it's a little dicey in my mind yet with the way it is in our bylaws, which is probably the lowest document of all. I don't know how the charter rates as it relates even to our codes in that vein. But I am aware of Article 6, and I attempted to actually put that in there, Bill, which might be, as you said, a better place to address this. The issue I have in all the places, though, is quorums. You know, when you talk about 11, this ain't, to me, just about the full council. It's also about our standing committees, where we have 5. And not all too often, but often enough, we sometimes have just the 3 members necessary to have a quorum. And in that case, the chair really needs to be involved in the discussion, motion, and voting, in my mind, or you're rarely going to get anything out of committee. But, Mr. O.J., I'm sure you have the topping on the dropping.
Well, Doc, that ain't never stopped you before, because you're always in the, the discussion. So, I mean,
Well, I mean, I'm like, you know, I've heard compliments tonight, Mr. Joseph, to Terry, rightfully so, and to Bill. So I will confess, tic-tac-toe, I'm the third musketeer. I'm not shy.
all right.
But I mean, I've seen former, and I don't mean to pick on people, Mr. Chris Law is a good example where he would say he can't vote because he was believing, I guess, that he could only do it to break a tie, but later, on other items like, I remember quick take expropriation, I remember government franchise garbage, Madam Secretary, let the record show the chair votes this way. So I just want to be sure that everybody, at least by discussing this, it's done an important thing, I think, understands whether you are timid or not, you have the right to vote. In my mind, I would never try it, but if I had my druthers, I'd say the chairman, you know, can't, the ability where he can, I'd like a shell in there, just to force the people who he represents or she represents to see exactly how he feels on each and every issue. But I'm reasonably certain, guys and gals here, that if I tried to force the chairman to vote, it wouldn't get too far. But go ahead, OJ, you have the floor, sir.
Yeah, well, I mean, Doc, I'm like everyone else here. Because we're going to try to go to this committee, the change, I think that would be one of the items to go. I already know, like you say, our council rules and regs that we have, the guidelines. I think we might can put something in there, look at it from that point of view, and that would ease some of your concerns and maybe some of other people's concerns in it that way for right now. But the home rule charter, if we can just, you know, they come out that committee with it, I wouldn't have a problem with it.
Let me make this comment on that, because I didn't comment on Aaron, but now it's been brought up twice. This is sort of interesting to me. If we say we don't even need to be changing this because the existing language in the homeroom charter will allow you to do it if you want to or not, then why do we need a homeroom charter commission to convene to consider it?
I thought that's what this was about.
No, this is about amending. We have the power to amend things as a council. And it could be done either by putting it to a vote of the people, or, as I said earlier, Bill was just talking about it, we could go to look at Article 6 and put wording in there to take care of this. But I don't see this as an issue that we would convene a homeroom charter commission for at all, especially.
I apologize, I misunderstood.
Especially since we say that the chairman shall be only required, to vote and to break a tie. As you pointed out, Mr. Lawler, we already have that. And if you're not timid like Terry or Bill or myself, or even the times in which Mr. Law saw fit to do it. And I'm also concerned with, although I think we're doing better in the PNZ. I know the PNZ attempts to, and they say it in public all the time, to emulate us. Back when they didn't have bylaws, they said that, well, we are operating under bylaws, the council's bylaws. And I objected. I said, you need to have your own. That's a state requirement of you as an appointed body. So they adopted Robert's Rules of Order. Having done so, they're back to what I read in the record here. The chairman can motion, vote, and discuss. Yet that's not happening, although lately I do see Mr. Pryor voting more often than he has in the past, but he has verbally expressed multiple times, and again, the media, I'm sorry, David, I'm sorry, Wade, keep picking up this business about not voting other than to break a tie. And actually, if you really dig into Robert's Rules of Order, let me put this in the record too. It says further, the chairman shall, on the big bodies, vote to break a tie or otherwise affect an outcome, which means the chairman can vote to create a tie. And by creating a tie, whatever the question is before the assembly, it fails. But again, what is the pleasure? Well, do we need another round of discussion? Or?
No, I don't.
No, I don't. Down here. Okay, what is the pleasure of this committee? It was pleasurable for me because we had a discussion, I can tell you that.
Well, I think of the discussion, but if anything needs to be done, I would say if you wanted to bring back the Article 6 and look at that in totality, and have this as maybe one fine tuning of Article 6.
Do you want to make that as a motion? Did it come back to this committee looking at Article 6 for discussion purposes only, to begin with?
Yeah.
Good.
I'll second
Then
that.
Chair was going to second it. How ironic.
You can't second.
Absolutely. Actually, I
I'm
can.
joking, I'm joking.
We have Robert's Rules of Order that says I can. Chairman can, okay. So we have it moved by Councilman Dawson and seconded by Councilman Lawler, because he beat me to the microphone, that we take a look at Article 6 of the council's procedure as a potentially better place, using Mr. Dawson's word, to examine this. And again, folks, this will just be placed on our agenda for a discussion, and we're either going to decide then that, that does have some need for a change, or there isn't, and it dies in committee, and that's fine. It's what deliberative societies do, and so forth. One thing it definitely does, it tells the public that we are thinking about how we're operating, and we just want to make absolute certain, be certain that we're operating as fairly and as efficiently as we possibly can. So it's moving second. Any discussion? Any objections? So moved. So we'll bring this back to SPC at a future meeting.
Move to adjourn.
Our last item, number 8, is adjournment. We have a motion to adjourn by Mr. Dawson, second by Ms. Casso.
I'll third it.
This meeting is,
Robert's Rules of Order.
you are out of order, Mr. Lawler. This meeting is adjourned.